go over these few words again. V'kol eisek olam hazeh u'la'hagia la'or zeh shela'acher hachet sheyashuv. Fundamental and profound statement. That the whole business of this world is to get to this particular type of or, which is the or which comes after the chet. Sheyashuv. There's no or after a chet you have choshech. But after Tshuva, the or that's chozer v'nir is a stronger or than the or that was there even before the chet. And this is what we've been learning. This is why it was so important for Dovid HaMelech to come from Stoim, Kupa Shel Shrotzim, Makom Shabali Tshuva, Oimdim Tzadikim Gemorim, Einam Yichel Ma'amid Sham. But Dovid HaMelech, Olav HaShalom, Shehu Hascholas Or HaMoshiach, Hu HaGever Shehekim Oilo Shel Tshuva. The Gemara tells us that he is the first one to do public Tshuva, clearly. First one to do public Tshuva, who's making Oilo Shel Tshuva. That was appropriate, that was David appropriate. Come sit here. Yeah. I don't feel comfortable with it. It had to be Dovid HaMelech that had to do tshuva, not because Dovid HaMelech did an avera. It had to be Dovid HaMelech that talked about tshuva, did tshuva, because that's what Mashiach is, bringing out an or which is greater than an or that we've ever seen before in history. And that or can only be is this a word, a re-revelation of the Or Hagonus, or is revelation enough? A re-revelation of the Or Hagonus, and that's only coming about through a low part in history, and then coming up again as tshuva. I just want to say something very simple that occurred to me. Maybe I mentioned this. Vayavo Yaakov Sholem Ir Shechem. Is that the pasuk? Vayavo Yaakov Sholem Ir Shechem. Rashi tells us Sholem b'mamoinoi, Sholem b'teirasei, Sholem b'gufoi. He was Sholem on all levels. By the time he got to Shechem, he was Sholem. First of all, what was he Sholem? He wasn't Sholem b'gufoi. He was Tzolei al Yerecha. Do we have a report someplace that he rehabilitated?
That's the report.
That's the report. But the mashmois is al kein lo yochlu b'nei Yisrael skida nosha ad hayom hazeh. Right, and I believe I once looked into it that Yaakov Avinu continued to be tzolei al Yerecha. Although I always thought that he stopped limping at this point. It says ki yirpa lo yashemesh, but we see that he was. But the point is this, that he came shalem to Shechem. Like, what was the shlemus that he had all of a sudden? B'teirasei, b'mamoinoi, b'gufoi. What was the shlemus that he didn't have in the yeshiva Shem Be'aver? When he was, what were all the years from the time that Yaakov Avinu got his bracha when he was bar mitzvah until when they took the bechor when he was bar mitzvah, the time he got his bracha when he was 63. So what do we know about Yaakov Avinu? You have any stories about Yaakov Avinu? We have so many stories about Yaakov Avinu. Is there any stories of it? From the time that he took that bechor until the time he got the bracha was 50 years. What happened during those 50 years?
When did he become Yisrael?
65,
later.
68. Every 10 years, the Torah sort of tells us how old he was, but those 50 years, silent years. So there was, it's like Rebbes, they go through Yemei Hashtika, silent, because the Torah tells us Yaakov Ish Tam Yoshev Oyel. He was sitting and learning in Kollel. Yaakov Ish Tam Yoshev Oyel. That took up all of those years, the 50 years. Zitztum Galei. That's what he was. He was Yaakov Ish Tam Yoshev Oyel. So that, like, you can imagine the kedusha of Yaakov Avinu at age 63, where Rivka saw Yaakov. This is not Eisav. Eisav went a different way those 50 years. Rav Hirsch famously says that at bar mitzvah age, when they were dealing with the bechira, they were both the same. You couldn't tell any difference. I guess all this hair and stuff came out afterwards. It was post-puberty. They're both the same. After that, it's just Shiloh Chinuch, Hirsch writes.
Wasn't he born with red hair?
Seder, but I'm saying personality-wise, they were the same. There was no great difference. You couldn't tell this was the good one, this was the bad one. But it was that age from the time of the Bechira until the time of the Brachas. We don't know anything about Yaakov. He was Ish Tam Yoshev Olam. So why wasn't he Shalem? And he wasn't yet knocked off by the story Shel Eisav. He wasn't yet limping. Whether he did heal or he didn't heal, but he didn't even have it yet. He didn't yet go through Lavan, where there was a monetary danger. And in Lavan Garti is Taryag Mitzvah Shemarti wasn't even an issue. He had the Taryag Mitzvah's Klar. So he was Klar, Shalem B'Teiraseh clearly. Shalem B'Teiraseh, Shalem B'Mamayne, Shalem B'Gufay. Perfect. It's like a child with with smooth skin and no wrinkles and no gray hair or has hair. That didn't go through all of the tribulations of life. Ein lecha shalem, God isn't a beautiful thing to see a little child who doesn't love a child. But the pshat is that's not called shleimus, because that's the or that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was goynes. That's a weak or, in comparison to the or of going through a base lavan v'taryag mitzvah shemarti, of going through a milchama with Sarah Shel Eisav, and then I'm still shalem b'gufay. Going through a base lavan, going through an Eisav, going through a malach. Hisarisa imalikim va'anoshim batucha. Sarisa, that's when he became Yisrael. To answer your question, he was only shalem after all of these tsaras.
After he had the shvatim, well.
No, he had the Tsar Gidl bottom, and the Tsar Gidl bottom. So the Shleimus is just a touch of Shleimus. Is the Shleimus of Mashiach is Dafka after at least 2,000 very difficult years. It's Al Korchus. That's when you can have the real or. Or Mashiach hu hagever shehikim oila shel Tshuva. Mashiach yiyeh, the whole pshat in Mashiach is that he will be hasoid v'tachlis hashleimus sheyisukan kol oilam kul al yodeh. That's tikkun. V'alkeinu yizkil l'shleimus hareach. Now we mentioned this. I just want to go a little bit to make sure we understand. Mashiach is zocha to the shleimus hareach. This sounds like left field. What's the big galus of Mashiach? Not Ruach HaKodesh, not Nevuah, not Herculean strength, lahavdil, but Shleimus Hareach. He's able to smell things out. T'barach Badayim. Yeshayahu said that Mashiach will be able to be judging innocent and guilty based on his sense of smell. And we know, I mentioned that when they wanted to test Bar Kochba, if he was really Mashiach or not, so that they went to him, the Chacham went to him, and they wanted to see if they tested whether he can sniff out who's innocent and who's guilty. And he failed. So they said that he's not the real thing. So the real thing, the real Mashiach, after all of this, look at this. Yava Yaakov Shalem Ir Shechem. So Mashiach came. In the history, in the microcosm of history that Yaakov Avinu went through, Mashiach came. He came Shalei Bir Shechem. Some say that in history was the Milchemes Gog U'Magog, the Shimon and Levi. And what does he have already from all of this? He has the Chush Hareach. It just seems like anticlimactic. But what we need to understand is this. That let's try to understand it very simply. That Reach is very, very interesting because when you see something, the thing is there. It's here, and I'm collated. The eyes are allowing me to make this impression on my brain. I'm taking something which is there. It's a mass. When I'm hearing something, it's probably more acoustic, but it's there. There is music in the air, and I'm hearing it. There's sounds. There's sound waves. When I'm tasting something, it's mamish there. It's mamish there. Like I'm tasting. When I'm eating steak or ice cream or whatever I'm eating, or a bad taste, it's mamish taking. So what's going on with those? When I'm feeling something, it couldn't be more there. Touch and feel. So all of those senses are sensing something which is so clearly there in the world of Gashmias, and I am ingesting it somehow into my consciousness, into my... Comes the Gemara and says, do you make a bracha on Reach? So the Gemara says, yeah, because Ezehu hana sha neshama nenes boy. There's a certain hana that the neshama is nenes boy. Kol neshama tahalelka. What is that? Eino yel Reach. It can only be Reach. Meaning, there's nothing really there, and if it's there, it's on such a metaphysical level. You can't see it, you can't touch it, you can't feel it. You can't hear it. Are there instruments that measure smell? Wow.
Yeah.
Other than the nose?
No, of course. That's how they make
Gas.
perfumes and whatever they have. Chemical smelling
That's at airports.
So the dogs.
No, they have machines that sniff out.
Yeah.
It's an amazing thing.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, okay, the nose could do it too. But what they're sniffing out there is almost a. I'm sorry that my science is not what it should be, but we're probably talking about the smallest broken down particles that could be that you can't see, you can't touch, you can't feel. We're talking about the dakus shebadakus. So if then everyone's blessed with one. With even dogs seem to have. This is an interesting thing, but koach of Reach. So the symbolism of Reach, if you will, is being able to see the smallest particles that even the eye can't see. It seems to be the symbolism of it. So therefore, Mashiach is, in the words of Yeshayahu Hanavi, Mariach Vadoyin. He's doing din according to Reach. And that's okay too. It's not like rubbish or loy bashamayim he, because it's real. These are real particles. But the symbolism of Reach is that he's able to smell something that nobody else can detect because it's so dakus, shibadakus. What's he smelling? He's smelling an avera. You can see somebody do an avera and then you see it. You're a witness. You can hear somebody talking lashon hara, so you hear it. That's real. But to smell an avera, it's a shver ma'isa.
Must mean that there's something there. There's got to be something there.
Something there.
Something there.
So bein l'toiv, bein l'ra.
It's like a lie detector test. So there can be some extremely subtle change in a person's chemistry caused by the avera.
And even more subtle. It's even more subtle, almost like because the reach. I'm just thinking that if a person can't see, God forbid, so he's blind. If you can't hear, you're deaf. What is it called if you can't smell?
Anosmia.
There you go. There's always one.
I was told to be here for that reason.
A little bit like you don't even mention this on a shidduch. Yeah, that anosmia. Blind, like a guy's blind. I mean, like that's a big deal. Deaf, it's a big deal. Right? Imagine a person doesn't have the koach hamishush. You can't feel anything. These are sick people. You don't have the koach of smell. So my nafkamina, like
It's clear that
I have a son-in-law that can't smell, by the way. Like he's a very chashuv rabban. His mind works brilliantly and everything works well, but he can't smell. So he doesn't make a bar minim b'savim. He hasn't got the koach of he doesn't make a bar minim b'savim. So my daughter tells me very hard to cook for him because taste is so influenced by smell. Isn't that interesting?
Taste is mostly smell.
What?
Taste is mostly smell.
It's mostly smell, yeah.
So half of a fellow that look at the koach of smell.
There are only 4 tastes, but there's a multitude of smells.
So I mentioned here the story of the Balatanya last week with the coin. I just want to tell you something like that. From the Baal Shem Tov came a Messiah that a Rebbe, tzaddik, somebody who you go to for a tikkun, a person does an avera, and you go to a person for a tikkun. Seems like a Hasidic thing to do. Go to somebody for a tikkun. The Baal Shem Tov taught his Talmidim, which became the Rebbes and the heads of all Rebbes. They were called Talmidei Habesh. They weren't Chasidei Habesh. They were Talmidei Habesh, and they became Rebbes. They had Chasidim, al pi rov. But the Sfarim say that he taught them the Chush HaReach. Meaning that when somebody comes to you for a tikkun, you can't just academically give the person a prescription, and the spiritual prescription tell the person what to do. Somebody comes to you for a tikkun, you have to be able to feel that someplace within yourself in order to be misakin. So here you have an irony where the biggest kaddish v'tahar in the community is the one who's supposed to feel everybody's averas. How does that work? So the Baal Shem Tov said, like, you don't want to tell the Rebbes, like, experience the averas and eat some treif so you know what it feels like. Isn't it true that sometimes if you're zocha, everybody's zocha in the family or community to be somewhat of a balaitza. It's the things that you've gone through, the hardships that you've gone through, that make you a good balaitza. If you've never been poor, you don't have anything to say to a poor person. It's just you're saying over something you read in a book or something you heard, but you're not explaining. You're not feeling the poverty of somebody unless you went through at least one day of real poverty. If you've never been sick, it's very difficult to counsel somebody who is sick, and if you've never done that aveira or experienced that Yetzer Hara, so what are you giving Eisav? It's very, very academic. So the Baal Shem Tov was madras the Talmidim to find within themselves somewhere that avera that person may have done. So I told you the story of the Baal Shem Tov. He got to a point somebody told him an avera, he couldn't even find it until he found it. So this is an unusual avoda. So the Baal Shem Tov said this. He said, how can you do an avera? How can you tell? So you can do the Chush HaReach. You're not going to eat something that's spoiled, but you can smell it to see if it's spoiled. So the Chush HaReach means exercising that. I think it's a very deep thing. Exercising that which nobody else sees in the Avera. People are talking about the tam of the Avera, or the feel of the Avera, or the look of the Avera, but they're not talking about the smell of the Avera. So the tzaddik could pick up the smell of the Avera and relate to the Avera on that level. Does that make any sense to you?
The question is here, using smell in two ways. One is figuratively, and one is literally the molecule.
Oh, three ways. I thought you were going to say different two ways. There's one's smell and one's ability to sniff, and a spiritual smell.
Yeah, so how do we know, for instance, when Chazal say Chush HaReach by Mashiach, that it means the physical? Because that's the way it sounded.
Look, when the Gemara says that you make a bar mineh b'samim on reach.
Yeah, but that's not by Mashiach.
No, but it's talking about kol haneshama.
Yeah.
Ezo hanosh haneshama nenespa. So there's a crossover between ruchnius and gashmius right there, because it's talking about physical smell.
Yeah.
You're making a bar mineh b'samim, and the Gemara is telling us that neshama is nena.
So according to the way you're learning, your son-in-law couldn't be Mashiach.
I gotta get a new shot.
But is that really muchach because there's a crossover that over there when it says Chush HaReach, then it could be like they meant like Ruach HaKodesh.
Seder. What's Mashiach called by Dovid HaMelech? Ruach Avinu. Ruach Avinu. Mashiach Hashem. It's interesting. Okay.
By the way,
I hear.
by the way,
there's a little bit of a.
Are you allowed to? Is Mashiach allowed to paskin according to the? He knows. People know by
the Sanhedrin. He's going with the Sanhedrin.
Huh?
He's working with the Sanhedrin to paskin al pi l'maisa. But it's Kadosh Baruch is also smelling and paskining by reach nechayach.
Right.
Kadosh Baruch is paskining by reach. He's not paskining by riyah. Only paskining by reach also. we bring a carbon. Is it a real carbon? It's not a real carbon. They all both look the same. Maybe even to Hashem they both look the same, but the reach is a different reach.
Reach means the most subtle.
That's what I'm saying. So reach means the most subtle.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're not going to attribute physical sense of smell to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so to speak. Obviously, he can do whatever he wants, but that's not what we're talking about. That he has a good nose for karbanos. But the pshat is that the most subtle, almost the borderline between Gashmius and Ruchnius is the reach. Still sounding so Mamela, I'm just saying on the negative side, the Baal Shem Tov told the Rebbes, and this is something you're going to have to suffer with if you want to be a Rebbe, is that you have to have at least a reach for chet. At least a reach for chet if you want to be able to help anybody. It's very complicated. You know, the Baal Shem Tov said that he was able to, on some level, experience every ra and every chet, and that's why he was able to help people. Don't know what it means, but I know. Reb Nachman, the Breslover, says Baal Shem Tov wasn't bad enough. He wasn't bad enough. He wasn't. This is something about the Baal Shem Tov. He said it was his uncle. He said his grandfather. His grandfather. Great grandfather. Great uncle. Whatever. It was a descendant, but he said he wasn't bad enough. He wasn't margish like the Ra bad enough. Not like I am. Said Reb Nachman. Like I really get it.
He said he passed his level when he was bar mitzvah. He says maybe because
In Ra.
In Ra.
Could it be that the nefesh level is the part that's more connected to the Gashmiach? To go to Ruach, that's the next level of
Ruach Apecha. So Ruach, so exactly right. So Ruach and Reach are sort of on the same level. Nefesh, a nefesh asher asa, a nefesh sees, the nefesh, but the Ruach is the Reach. So that's.
There's no chet with the reach also, is that true?
There's no chet?
Yeah, with reach. I mean, you could read it something, but the actual smell might smell like a food that's provisioned.
There's a Gemara in Shechem. The Gemara in Shechem says that there's a Surei Hana. So the Gemara says that Hana Balad and Balkarchai. The Gemara has a whole shiloh there, whether that's usher or not. So therefore, if a person's walking down the street and sells a ruach of a reach of avodah zarah, is he chayav or is he not chayav? So the Gemara has a whole amud of efsher, loy kamachavin, loy efsher, kamachavin, right? All the different scenarios. At the end of the day, there's a possibility of if there was no way else to walk, and you weren't machavin, but you have the reach, so it's mutter. This is the way I'm walking, and it's mutter. So you have a heichatimsa of even a reach of avodah zarah, that a person can have a reach for avodah zarah. So if somebody's coming to you and talking to you about their avodah zarah, the correct answer in counseling, spiritual counseling, is not avodah zarah. I can't even listen to the pshat. Is I understand where you're coming from. See, this was where Menashe HaMelech admonished Rav Ashi in a dream. Rav Ashi made fun of Menashe HaMelech because he was over avodah zarah. So Rav Ashi came to him in a dream and said, "Do you even understand avodah zarah? Do you have a hasag in avodah zarah? Were you there?
Mm-hmm.
You don't know anything." So like all of a sudden Rav Ashi felt small and cheap because he never was over avodah zarah. I'm sorry, never over avodah zarah. The pshat is that there's a reich of avodah zarah. So let me say this, that b'olam hazeh yuchal liskois me'ein zeh b'Shabbos. So what do we have? We have HaKadosh Baruch Hu is yorach is reich hanichayach. HaKadosh Baruch Hu uses the sense of smell to Yaakov. Yitzchak uses the sense of smell to decide who to give the bracha to. By yorach es reich begodav. V'hinei kereich hasoda v'yivorach Eisav. So he uses a sense of reach when the sense of sight and the sense of touch and feel fail him. He uses his reach. He has shmiya, it also failed him. He's mixed up. Hakol kol Yaakov, hayadayim midei Eisav, My senses are conflicting. What's emes is the reach. I mentioned the Bnei Yissaschar last week, I think, that why is the Chush HaReach didn't get messed up by Yitzchak? Because he was B'sakein Adam Arishin. Adam Arishin used every one of his senses in the Eitz Hadas. Except for the Reach.
But Kam is saying
He tasted it, he saw it, Vayar Kitoiv, he listened to his wife.
if taste is connected with Reach, though, then...
So it's a like an add-on, a ruchniistic add-on to the Reach, which gives a tam. To the ochel, which gives a tam. It's mostly from the tam. So we need to talk about it. So let's just before we finish, let's just go back over this Gemara. We talked about the Gemara of Rav Shimon Bar Yochai came out of the Ma'ara. And what does he see? He sees the Sava the second time. He sees the Sava, the Eltishka, running with Shtei Medani Asa Biyada. He has two myrtles in his hand, and he's running. Why are you running? It's Erev Shabbos, Bein Hashmashas. We spoke about between the Shemesh and the Areach, between the Noisin and the Makabel. He was standing here on Bein Hashmashas of Erev Shabbos. We spoke about, and he's running. And why do you have two? Rav Shimon Bar Yochai asked him. He said, "Echa keneged Shamar, v'echa keneged Zachar." Why didn't he ask him? Why do you have one? That would have been a more fundamental question. Like, why are you running with? Do we run with myrtles on Erev Shabbos? We run with potatoes. We run with chicken, with flowers for our wives. Who's running with myrtles? Maybe close flowers. Maybe that's close.
He's far sometimes running.
It's far to run with myrtles. They do. Run with the myrtles. They're from the Gemara. That's why they do it. Many Hasidim also. Dafka Meriach. What was Echad Keneged Shamar v'Echad Keneged Zachar? What was he doing with these myrtles?
Why Bein Hashmashas?
Bein Hashmashas. Well, he's running for Shabbos.
But why Dafka Bein Hashmashas?
Beautiful. The shot is that what was clear apparently to Rav Shimon Bar Yochai after he came out of the Ma'ara the second time is that comes to Shabbos, you're mishtamesh with the Chush HaReach. You've gotten out of the Nefesh into the Ruach. You come to where look, this is not so complicated. What it means is that on Shabbos we're able to feel on a more sensitive level. If you're tuned into it, there's a more sensitive level. It's Chush HaReach. So Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, who became sensitive in that last year in the Ma'ara to being Makabel, he became sensitive to being Makabel, and he became sensitive in Bein Hashmashas, as you say, the time of transition. During the time of transition between the world of Nefesh and the world of Ruach. So it was pashut that you need a myrtle for this. There has to be, so we don't understand the transition going the other way. We're losing Shabbos, and we smell besamim. It's the other side of the transition. But it's interesting that the transition into the Kedusha and out of the Kedusha, lefi the Sava of the Gemara, is all with the Chush HaReach. Meaning the bridge between Nefesh and Neshama is Reach.
So one's
Bein Hashmashas, both ways.
One's Ruach Sheba Nefesh and one's Nefesh Sheba Ruach.
Nefesh. So it's going in two different directions. But it's all the Chush HaReach, which is the Beinayim of the senses, going from and it works you right up to Neshama. Eizu Anosh HaNeshama Nenas Boiz HaChush HaReach. I'll call Neshima or Neshima to Halilka. That's what the Gemara says. Every time I take a breath, when you breathe, it's also like the least. You breathe while you're sleeping, you breathe while you're eating, and if you don't pay attention to it, you don't even realize you're breathing. If you pay attention to it, like you're doing some type of breathing exercise, or you're an athlete or something, how many breaths per minute? Beseder. But if you're not, unless somebody has something wrong with their breathing, it's just you're not even paying attention to it. It's the thing you pay least attention to. So that's Neshima is the same. That's the same. The Gemara equates that with Reach. Reach and Ruach. It's all the same thing. Ruach. Mashiach is called Ruach HaPeinu. So the Sava, to get it clear, so the Sava is running with the Madane Asa because he's doing Kabbalah Shabbos, and the Reb Shimon Bar Yochai's only question to him is, why do you have two? So he says, how can you compare the Reach of Zachar with the Reach of Shamar? Tabdakistik is Reach. It's Echad Keneged Shamar, Echad Keneged Zachar. Two different levels in Reach Gufa. We have another couple minutes. Let's go a little further. Hadassim Nikrat Tzadikim. Now he says Hadassim, which this old man was running with, are called Tzadikim. V'Shamar b'Megillah Yates, Esther Zu Hadassim. V'Hainu Eisam Shaloi Chatu. K'Moshe Amru Hadudayim Nasnu Reach. Elu B'Chure Yisrael Shloi Ta'am U'Tam Chet. This is a pasuk in Shir Hashirim. The pasuk in Shir Hashirim says Hadudayim Nasnu Reach. No, it's a pasuk in Yeshayahu, and it's echoed in Shir Hashirim. This is the Gemara. Gemara there, Yeshayahu. Let me just see. Erevin.
Is that why Rachel wanted them so badly?
Oh, let's get to Rachel in a minute. Don't jump. Erevin, Chaf Aleph, let's get a start on this Gemara. Omar Rav Chisda. Darash Mari Bar Mar. What a name for somebody who's going to talk about smell. Mar Duror. The strongest spice. Mar Duror. Zu Mordechai. Hadassah Zu Esther. Let's hold that in the background a little bit. Mordechai is the Mar Duror, strongest spice. Hadassah Zu Esther. Omar Rav Chisda. Darash Mari Bar Mar. Mari Bar Mar. My deceit. I apologize. Yirmiyahu Chavdalad. Yirmiyahu Chavdalad. Hirani Hashem. I had a vision from Hashem. V'hinei shnei dudai te'enim mu'adim lifnei heichal Hashem. And there were two branches of figs that were mu'adim. Rashi says muchanim. They were ripe. Mu'ad. Lifnei heichal Hashem. Complete. Shor hamu'ad. Complete. Lifnei Hashem. Lifnei heichal Hashem. Had a dream. Yirmiyahu had a nevuah, and he saw two te'enim that were standing ripe in front of the heichal Hashem. This is Yirmiyahu's dream. Hatuda echad, says Yirmiyahu, te'enim toivos ma'oid. One dude was beautiful figs. Kitene habakurais. Like the sweetest, the bakurais are the sweetest and the ripest te'enim that there could possibly. Beautiful figs. Says the Gemara interjects in this pasuk, what was the pshat in his nevuah? Elu tzadikim gemurim. One of them he saw tzadikim gemurim. Hadud echad, the other dud, says Yirmiyahu, back to the pasuk, te'enim ra'os, were bad figs. Says the Gemara, what did he see? Elu rishayim gemurim. So Yirmiyahu's vision came in the form of two fig trees. One fig was good and one fig was not good. One was sweet and one was sour. And the Gemara learns that what he was seeing was, I see in front of the Heichal Hashem Tzadikim Gemurim, and I see Rishayim Gemurim. V'Shema Toimar. So now Rav Mari Bar Mar Darshans, like you got to ask, what are these Rishayim Gemurim doing in front of the Heichal Hashem? What are they doing there? Shema Taimar Avad Sivram Uvatal Sikuyam. Does this mean that they were rotten Te'enim, that they have no potential? Avad Sivram, they have no pneumius, they have no potential. Sikui, Avad Sikuyim. Talmud Loimar, Pasuk in Shir Hashirim, Hadudayim nasnu reach. So I was right. That's a pasuk in Jewish. Hadudayim nasnu reach. You should know that the Dudayim, this is how the Gemara is learning, or Fista is learning in Shem Mori Bar Mar, the Dudayim that Yirmiyahu was talking about later. Yirmiyahu's Nevuah was present already in Shlomo HaMelech, Shir HaShirim, and Shlomo HaMelech said, Hadudayim nasnu reach. That both Dudayim are giving off a reach. Elu va'elu, says the Gemara Darshans, this pasuk in Shir HaShirim, Asidin sheyidnu reach, are going to give off a reach. So, what's this drasha? Let's just look at it for a second. What's this drasha? Yirmiyahu says, I see a good teina, I see a good fig and a bad fig. Right? Good apple, bad apple. Good fig, bad fig. Tzadikim, Rishayim. What's compelling Mari Bar Mar? What's compelling him is, what's he doing with Nehechel Hashem? What's he doing there? It's a Russia. Go. So, right? Russia. Azazel. What are you doing with Nehechel Hashem? Comes the Gemara Darshans that, let's remember the pasuk in Shir HaShirim. The pasuk in Shir HaShirim is Hadudayim nasnu reach. That both Dudayim, which is an obvious, something which is standing in Shemayim that both Yirmiyahu had a vision of, and Shlomo HaMelech had a vision of, these Te'enim, something we need to think about. Why Te'enim? But why not apples? But these Te'enim, they both give off a reach. So you might think that these Rishayim have no tachlis, these Rishayim have no pnimius, these Rishayim have no potential, they have no sivram, and they have no sikuyim, they have no sikuy and no svara. Kamash Milan, says the Gemara, Adudayim nasnu reach, that both of them have a reach type. Elu ve'elu asidin sheyidnu reach. So the Darshans. Just finish the Gemara. Darash Rava. Rava has a different drasha. Maybe it's machlokes. Maidach Siv, let me darshan this a little bit differently. He says, Hadudayim nasnu reach, Hadudayim nasnu reach, Elu bachure Yisrael Shlita mutam chet. The Dudayim are both tzaddikim. So he's arguing. The Dudayim are both tzaddikim. Because a Dudayim Shlita mutam chet. And he says, because look at the rest of the pasuk, Val psachenu kol megadim elu b'nois Yisrael shemagida is pischem lebaleihem. He's talking about the Bachrim. Shlomo HaMelech is talking about Hadudayim nasnu reach. They're so sweet that they give off such a good reach. The tzaddikim, the children before their chet, and the young women of psachenu kol megadim, that they guard themselves from any type of sensual satisfaction until their husbands. Magidos pischem lebaleihem, they save themselves, so to speak, for their husbands. Sha'oivdos pischem lebaleihem. It goes on in Darshans the rest of the pasuk. Shechadoshim gam yishenim doidi tzafanti lach. So the Dudayim, Rava says, has to be talking about tzaddikim. You can't have Dudayim in front of the Heichel Hashem, which are Rishayim. Okay, so what's he arguing? He's arguing with Yirmiyahu? No. He says that Yirmiyahu, Rava learns that Yirmiyahu saw two Dudayim, he saw two Dudayim of tzaddikim. But that's not what Yirmiyahu says. Shnei Dudai Teinim, Mu'adim Heichel Hashem, Hadud ha'echad Teinim Toivos Moike Teinei Abu Kurais, Hadud ha'echad Teinim Rois. It's the Lashon of Yirmiyahu. So what's he saying? It's tzaddikim. Like how do you answer Rava's kasha?
Holy Tshuva.
Holy Tshuva. I once said a Torah like this. Let me indulge me for a moment. Bitzi Rusai, which was a long time ago. That the Gemara in Avodah Zarah has a shaila about wine, chamra b'chalsa. You mix wine with vinegar. So is a bottle, how much does it take to be bottled? There's a shaila. Wine is different. It doesn't work with the regular shisha, usually. Wine is because of the shtus, with the sixth. So machlokes is Abaye v'Rava over there. So Abaye says, the Gemara in Avodah Zarah says, you go by the reach. That's what Abaye says. You go by the reach. It smells like wine, it's wine. It smells like vinegar, it's vinegar. Rava says you go by the top. If it tastes like wine, it's wine. If it tastes like vinegar, it's vinegar. Like every other case of kashrus, right? Bottle, time of bottle. Shishim is mevatel a tam. So it's interesting, you go by the time, you go by the reach. Let's start that this is Rabbi L'Shitasa, because the tam of a chote is ra. If you smell the chote, like you're the Baal Shem Tov, and you smell the chote, so you can smell something good in there. So Rabbi says, look, a lot of oil tam. It smells like wine, it's wine. It smells like vinegar, it's vinegar. It is what it is. And Abaye says, not so pashut. It could smell like wine and be vinegar. It could look like wine and be vinegar. It could look like vinegar and be wine. So not everything's cracked up as it's cracked up to be. It's mamish the same thing over here. I don't think it's a machlokes whether Yirmiyahu says that the one of the branches of Ta'inim was Ra. But what's it doing with Heichal Hashem? So comes Mari Bar Mar, and he says, but it still has a good reach. It still has a good reach. Avad Sivra Mabatal Sikuya. What does it mean? It has no tachlis at all? Can't be. Talmud Loimar Hadu Doim Nasnu Reach. Both the Doim give off a reach tov. So what's he saying? What's Mari Bar Mar saying? From Rava, the opposite, we can see what he's saying. Rava's saying, they don't look good to me. Rotten figs are rotten figs. The tam is mevatel the reach. But let's go back to Mari Bar Mar. He says, well, why are you saying that? Why are you saying that the tam is mevatel the reach? True, they did bad things and bad experiences, and there were failures in life. But Shema Toimar Avad Sivra Mavatal Sikuyim. What do you want to say? That they have they lost their whole pneumius, they lost their whole neshama, they lost that there's no good smell in them at all? Of course there is. So that's why what Yirmiyahu saw Lifnei Heichal Hashem, he saw tzaddikim and rishayim, tainim rois, don't even know about the tshuva part yet. We don't even know about the tshuva part, but even in the Russia, there's a reach tov.
Even Russia Gomer.
If you know how to smell it. If you know how to smell it. If you know how to sniff it out.
Sherets.
The
sherets.
Sherets of Rameir.
What was the lashon again? It said tov ma'od about the tzaddikim, but was it rab ma'od or?
Rishayim gemurim. Ta'enim rois elu rishayim gemurim. And it says it's a hafladik gemur, meaning that Rabbi L'Shitasa. It's the same Rabbi as Ish Shlayma. So there's Rabbi all over the place. Look at Tachlis. But the Rabbi L'Shitasa. But this, I don't know where else he pops up in the Gemara. Mari Bar Mar. I love his name. Mari Bar Mar, the Baal HaBesamim, if you will. The Baal HaBesamim tells us that even after you lose the tam, and even after you lose the riyah, and you lose the mishush, you've done everything wrong. Everything. I still smell something good about you. I still smell something good about you. You know that the koach by Yorach is reach hanichach. It's a ruchniistic koach that Hashem has, a ruchniistic koach that Yitzchak has. He smelled it by Yorach. He doesn't say by Yorach is reach begadov, and he smelled the Gan Eden, which Rashi says that Yaakov walked in with him. I was medayik this last week. It doesn't say that the Gan Eden came with him and got him. Nichnas imay reach Gan Eden. That's what Rashi says. Look at the Rashi. That wasn't the smell that Yitzchak was looking for. V'yorach is reach begadov v'hinei. What does it say? Reach hasadeh. This is the Gemara. Reach hasadeh. It was the reach hasadeh. That's what he smelled. V'yorach is reach begadov. Says the Gemara reach oigdov. He smelled Titus. He smelled Rishayim. Yosef Mashiach. Who did he smell? He smelled Rishayim. Yibis people that the traders he smelled. But what he smelled, what he was saying was, what Yitzchak was saying, what Mashiach is saying, so the din, you see, you ask, like, is it the same? Can he paskin according to that? Maybe not. Maybe it's like Rameir, ein halacha, can I say. But at least if there's something somewhere, this is what Mashiach is going to do. Ruach Apenu Mashiach Hashem. What Mashiach is going to be able to pull off is this, that even if somebody clearly is guilty b'Sanhedrin, and clearly has done something wrong, but Mashiach is still using his nose. Ruach Apenu, Mashiach Hashem, like Yitzchak, like HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he's still able to smell there's something good there. Or, you could do everything in the world good, but I smell a rat. Not always good. So this is what Yirmiyahu taught, according to Mari Bar Mar. And Mari Bar Mar, this is what he taught, that B'lifnei Heichal Hashem stands these Rishonim. Isn't this exactly what Reb Tzadok is teaching us? This is exactly what Reb Tzadok is learning here, that we can be zoichet to the Chush HaReach. So I just said this to Kudah. What's the Chush HaReach of Shabbos? The Chush HaReach of Shabbos is to be able to smell good even where it doesn't smell good. This is where we need to get to on Thursday. What happens, what are we supposed to be looking for on Shabbos? We've graduated, like the Sava told us, with the Shtema Daneasa to the Chush HaReach. We've graduated to the Chush HaReach. Okay, now what are we looking for? What are we smelling? It's something which can even conflict with the way it could look so bad and smell good. It could look so good. Like is Rav and Abaye. Right?
Wondering if a dog that has a heightened awareness of Kelev, like the Kelev, but Lev is Ruach, right? There's something that's his kaya. To look at the higher Madriga.
Very good. And this Nakuda he does, apparently.
Yeah.
Anne's best friend.
And Michael was already, we took a bunch of Bachrim together, to get married. And we gave our adults, it's like 6 or 7 of us. We want to give us a general bracha. Look at all of us, and he goes to one guy, and he goes, we're married. Like, yeah, we have no idea. I was thinking, a person to the Reach.
Sensitive.
Different Reach also, or just more of a